In a moment, the latest on the Russian economy, which even the Kremlin now admits has problems. First, I'll skip over what's the meaning of life in Moskovsky Komsomolets and new trend for young Russian women, mass Botox injections in the foot to make wearing high-heeled shoes more comfortable. And we'll start with today's headline in Nezavisima Gazeta. IT business calls the authorities to account for the internet. More evidence here of the unpopularity of attempts by the Russian authorities to tighten control of Russian cyberspace. Summing up the results so far of the restrictions on mobile internet in Russia and the battle with some services, the Russian IT industry has announced that investment certainty has been lost. This may have a disastrous effect in the future on the country's digitalization. IT developers said there is a need for the authorities to clarify as soon as possible what is happening with the internet in the country and how long restrictions will last. The paper quotes Sergei Votikov from Rusoft, an organization which reportedly represents the whole software technology industry in Russia. He said this: "Amid the instability, we, IT specialists, do not understand if there'll be internet a month from now or in half a year. We need to understand roughly when everything will be restored, because in a few months, in half a year, the industry may be in ruins." On the economy, the paper says this: "A managed cooling has turned into an accelerating decline. In Russia, the decline in consumer confidence is growing." Even ultra-pro-Kremlin Komsomolskaya Pravda is talking now about an economic downturn. That's because the president himself is admitting problems. This week, Vladimir Putin demanded answers from ministers and from the central bank about why the Russian economy is performing worse than expected. Statistics show that for 2 months in a row, the economic trend, unfortunately, is downwards. In January and February, GDP was 1.8% lower. Izvestia examines why the economic forecasts of the Ministry for Economic Development and the central bank differ from reality by 2.5 times. The forecasts of economy officials are growing further and further from reality. Now, there is a lot in this article about forecasts, forecasting, and more forecasts, about economic predictions being out. Incorrect forecasts by the authorities can lead to a growing budget deficit. What you won't find here is any discussion of the underlying reason for the pressure on the Russian economy. In other words, more than 4 years of Russia's war on Ukraine. Perhaps the closest we get to that is a reference to pressure from sanctions and geopolitical factors. Unstable geopolitics. Good news, though, for Russians who want to visit Zambia. Zambia will introduce visa-free travel for Russian citizens. Bad news for Donald Trump, according to Izvestia. For Trump, deal is a sacred word. He thinks any conflict can be reduced to an exchange of unequal concessions. In the colonial history of the West, this worked perfectly. Iran is a different story. Oh, and if you were wondering about the meaning of life, here's the conclusion. If we, humanity, want to survive, we need to try to become better and not degenerate. And also, if you're wondering what VAT stands for, according to the joke section of Moskovsky Komsomolets, no, it's not value-added tax. The paper takes the Russian equivalent abbreviation НДС and expands it thus: Надо доить сильнее, must milk them for even more.